watching OTB AM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Morning.
How's life?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, and yourself?
You're itching to get in and get talking about Leinster. I know we've had a constant debate this morning from various people about what the most memorable moment of the decade is. Plenty of comments coming in. Darragh O'Toole says Connacht winning in 16 must be up there. It wasn't something we'd actually overly discussed or considered, but
it would be. It's obviously
serious achievement. The unlikeliness of it is the thing.
It's kind of like Leicester in the Premier League, and
yeah.
Even Connacht people would acknowledge that, you know, they don't win titles. They hadn't won titles before, so that was a really special year for them.
What else have you got?
There's a lot of big moments, I think. Depends what province you're from. If you want to go provincial, you know, Leinster people would probably pick out that Northampton one, 2011, the comeback. Munster people might pick the Ronan O'Gara drop goal against Northampton in Thomond Park. For me, though, I think that the one that there's a couple. There's Johnny Sexton's drop goal in Paris. I was doing the commentary for Virgin Media with that one, and it was right up there with the best moment you've ever been involved in as a commentator. Unfortunately, I'm out of the game a little bit to kind of playing memories, ones I've been involved in. The Grand Slam in Twickenham. Again, Paddy's Day, Twickenham, the atmosphere, the performance, the significance of it was really special against probably our biggest rivals. So that was an incredible day.
Eddie Jones was nearly sacked around that time, wasn't he? There was a lot of calls for it. It was 3 in a row.
And we can easily pick worse moments. We could probably pick ones closer.
No shortage of those.
The last few weeks with the two of us in Japan. Most disappointing ones, not worse. Probably most disappointing.
Spending time with Owen in Japan was in your top.
Horrific, I'd say.
Yeah, it was. No, it was not. He was brilliant. He was so organised. Everything together. The New Zealand wins, the one in Dublin was really significant win. That was an incredible match. But the one that I would pick if I was picking a moment was the Irish team doing the figure of 8 in Chicago. Again, one of those special kind of days. It was really surreal. I wasn't out there. I watched it on TV, and given that Axel had only passed away a few weeks before, it was just a really special kind of gesture to him, to the impact he made as a player for Munster and Ireland, as a coach for Munster as well. And just that was really kind of touching moment, the most kind of emotional moment of them all, which was really special. I think the match itself then was, you know, it was kind of like...
And the players had come up with that concept, Quinny, am I right? Was that the...
Yeah, it was
the
players who came up with it, and it was just, I don't know, I just got a really kind of... It's like, you know, people talk about the hair standing on the back of your neck. It was just an emotional kind of belt goes through you when you see that, and it was a lovely moment from the players, and it was really well thought of. And he was obviously very, very close to lots of people who were involved in that match, players and coaches, and it was just one of those moments that was a very special moment in a very sad period of time for his family and for his former teammates and players and stuff. So it was
a great way to remember.
Incredible. Again, you could pick the match, the Munster-Glasgow match. If I was kind of picking a provincial match, I would say Munster-Glasgow and Thomond Park. Like, so many people were emotionally broken about what happened. Anthony was buried on Friday, the game was on Saturday. And it just would never have mattered what kind of team came to Thomond Park that day. If it was New Zealand at the time, Munster were never going to lose that game. They just played as if their own lives depended on it, just to honour Anthony, and the crowd were there 2 hours before the game.
Sons were out on the pitch before, and I think of
yeah, Olive was there and the family. It was an eerie kind of silence, but people felt an obligation to be there and to honour him. People were still incredibly. It was broken and shocked, and
the scenes afterwards were amazing.
Yeah, they were, and they're not ones you'd celebrate that it was a great day or anything, but it was just a really poignant day to honour somebody. With the impact Axel had made on so many people's lives, and you know, he was such an iconic figure in Irish rugby and Munster to the core, if you like. And I just remember that day, and I was due to work with Sky, so obviously when it happened, it was the last thing on my mind. And then Sky had contacted me and said, look, we need someone to do the game, and are you fit and able to come on, and do you want to? And I said, look, I didn't really want to. And they suggested would I get Mick Galway, because Galway was kind of our captain when a lot of us started off, and he was the one, if Galway said something, it was okay. And he was incredibly good at the funeral and in the build in throughout that. And Axel, myself and John Hayes would have been all Shannon, and we would have been very, very close back when we started with Shannon. And Galway was kind of the leader then for all the younger Munster players like Rog and Hayes and myself and Wally and Paul and Donica and all these guys. So I asked Galway, I said, look, what do you think? I asked for his advice, and he said, look, I think we should go on and talk about him just before the game.
Good.
And I felt assured that Galway was beside me, and James Gemmell, the Sky Sports reporter, obviously, I thought Sky were amazing. I'm not just saying that because I was working with them at the time, but I thought the tribute they played before the match and in the build-up and the way they honoured Anthony was incredible. But they were very, very sensitive about the whole situation, covering the game. So they obviously weren't going to talk tactics. It was about what happened.
It wasn't appropriate.
I couldn't do that. Unless Galway was doing it, I wasn't doing it. So he thought, yeah, we'll go on and honour him, like. And James Gemmell asked, and Axel would have got a laugh off this himself, because he was such a great character, but he asked him, what was it like? What were the last few days like? And Galway said, well, as funerals go, it was a great funeral.
Yeah.
And
very Irish way to put it.
I nearly collapsed. And, only Galway could say it and people could understand what he meant. It was great because so many people came together to show what the impact Axel had made and how fond of him they were. So that one, when you're talking about moments, like emotionally, that was just incredible.
Tough, yeah.
But I loved then a couple of weeks later when they did that moment in Chicago and the figure of 8. I just thought it was really special. And
those things help. Like, I know they can be seen as a sort of...
Yeah, well, I know it helped the family from speaking to family members and stuff. Of course it helped, and it would have been emotional for people because it was still very, very raw, and I just thought it was
the right thing to do.
Moment, yeah. That was the moment for me.
Yeah. All right, thanks for bringing that. That was unexpected, but thanks for being so giving on it. There's other more sort of slightly trite, I suppose, things to talk about.
Pressing matters at the moment.
We had Conor O'Shea was in studio with the lads yesterday, and he was being a bit tight-lipped on exactly what it is he's going to be doing with the RFU, but the Telegraph have it this morning that it's performance director. It's a slightly new role.
Yeah, I think because of obviously Conor's experience, and I think you could argue that maybe the Italian results there wasn't loads of major big wins and shock wins. I think there was consistency and they were very, very competitive along. But and I played with Conor, would you believe? Yeah. For a couple of seasons when I got called into the Irish squad around 97, and I played with him at the World Cup in 99. I made my debut. He was playing against, starting against Romania in the World Cup, but he's just such a popular guy, and he's such a guy who his knowledge of the game and his energy that he brings and his passion, and he's a friendly guy. He's a guy you'd naturally kind of enjoy having conversation with, and I think the impact he made at London Irish and then at Quins, I think that kind of reputation that he has of being a really good man manager and a very intelligent rugby man as well has brought him back into the English game. And
can I ask you for
a job, but you don't get a job like this, Adrian, unless you're highly thought of, and the perception from players who would have been involved with Quins, I think that's what kind of brings him back.
So the main thing that I'm thinking about when you're going through all those attributes and given the state of where the game is here at the minute, have the RFU not missed a trick by giving this guy a call and finding some sort of a space for him to work alongside David Nice?
I've thought about that, and I thought, get Conor O'Shea back into Irish rugby, get Mark McCall back into Irish rugby, get some of the other Irish coaches back into it. We know Rog and Mike Prendergast and
But him at a strategic level, given the experience that he has around academies.
Well, I think David Nucifora, fills that role here in trying to run the game here, being the director of rugby. And this is kind of a similar role. I'm not really sure the exact job spec it is. I think one of the areas that English rugby, and reading the piece in the Telegraph, I think one of the important things they've got to do is get some unity, particularly after the Saracen stuff, because obviously if you have every Premiership club at each other's throats, and maybe not working with the RFU and that connection and that pathway between club and country in England, and that's probably one of his biggest challenges now, to make sure that pathway of the national players stepping up with England and stuff, and maybe to try and build a few bridges there. But he's very well thought of, and I think that's
Should we have brought him in over here?
Should we brought him in over here?
Like, because David Nucifora's brief is very broad, right? Like, he has a lot on his table. Like, he's dealing with player contracts and all sorts of things. If we were of a mind to bring somebody like Conor O'Shea in, I'm sure we would have been able to find a position for him.
Yeah. Should we have brought him in? That's a hard question, because I'm not one for creating roles unless our system is pretty strong here within the provinces and stuff like that.
If you find the right person, then you find a position
well, what
for them.
does he do? Does he sit in an office and go around to the provinces every day and
like,
move
the hindsight of the
and
World Cup, obviously, in our not that distant rearview mirror, like, surely there would have been room for somebody. And I know that's hindsight, and in a way that wouldn't have been necessarily available with O'Shea, because this had been agreed months ago.
That's probably it is David Nucifora's role with Colin McEntee as well, and there is a kind of a pathway system and a system in place here. So I don't think that's our issue. Creating a job for somebody, bringing his knowledge into the game in Ireland, of course, would be a massive benefit. But you just don't want to bring someone in if there's not a role or a title there. And I don't think he would probably come in unless there's a role or a title there. I always thought maybe he would come back and be involved and be a director of rugby in one of the provinces, and maybe that would interest him. But he obviously has an interest going back to be in the UK and to take up that role. So it's a brilliant job for him and a brilliant appointment for him. And I think obviously part of the job will be to try and transition England under-20 players into Eddie Jones and make sure that pathway is smooth and that players are not being lost in the game in any way. But the system is very, very strong there with all the school system there. So if you play England under-20s, you're kind of nearly progressing on into Premiership clubs. But it's an interesting job for him, and it's one that is pretty exciting, I would say.
Just been confirmed there in the last few minutes that it's actually happening. He's confirmed as the RFU's new Director of Performance Rugby starting in the new year. Nigel Melville departs, and he's...
Does it say the job spec?
Doesn't have any more details on that now yet, but or certainly I don't. But the fact that he's not Eddie Jones' boss obviously might make life a bit easier for him. He's going to work alongside Eddie Jones, according to the...
Yeah, and look, he's been in the coaching game for a while, and he did work with the RFU before, didn't he? In a part-time role or something, a few years as an advisor or something like that. It's totally different than coaching, isn't it? Because you're really behind the scenes planning and putting structures in place and stuff. So it's an interesting one. And
what do you think that dynamic between the two of them will be like? Because they do have to work together. Shea and Jones, they seem like different characters.
Yeah, they do. But I think, look, Eddie Jones sometimes, and I've given him a few raps at times over the years, I think he's a pretty decent bloke behind it. And I've heard from lots of people that he's very giving of his time in the UK and very helpful to lots of clubs and organisations and stuff. He's a different beast when he's in that English mould, and he's loose with the tongue a little bit at times. But I'm sure he'll be... it's maybe an extra person to work with him and help him, and a springboard to put some data and information on younger players coming through that he might highlight with Eddie Jones.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about like the development of rugby or what tricks we're missing in perhaps our own union. Like, it'll be interesting. Perhaps Conor O'Shea could come back with greater experience and it'll benefit us in the long run. But on that point, like, I'm not sure if you see Gordon Darcy's column on Wednesday. The trick perhaps we're missing, and I know it's kind of tangential to this, is kind of from your own experience, the club game and what we're missing in Munster in particular. And Darcy was talking about the over-reliance on private schools, and granted it's a tale as old as time, but instead of perhaps looking at where we're at structurally at the top end, we should be looking down once again to grassroots and trying to figure out how we do get back to how the likes of yourselves came along and that club game that produced so many brilliant players for Munster at the time. It seems to be a conversation that's come up again this week.
Yeah, it's one that I've spoken about over the years.
Sure,
and the club game is the lifeblood of the game, and it's a very, very tricky act to follow. You just look at what's happening in Wales in their regional games with, the Ospreys. And I've spoken to Welsh people about this. There was more Munster people at the Munster Ospreys game in the Liberty Stadium there 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, because they were caught in between regions and their clubs, Neath, Swansea, Bridgend, really historical clubs and really clubs that have been there for a long, long time. And it's the transition over to get the fan to buy into Ospreys. And if things are going pretty well, yeah, they did probably for a few years, but a lot of those people are kind of gone back and drifted back towards the club game. Where in Ireland, a lot of the club, the traditional club fans, because I remember playing the 90s. I played Munster or Shannon Garryowen in Thomond Park, 10,000 people. Same with Young Munsters, Shannon, played them in Greenfields or in Dooradoyle. They were incredible fixtures, and those people kind of moved up, and resources probably moved up into the professional game. I remember when we played with Shannon, and the first time Shannon were told that their months were not available to the club.
Yeah.
The uproar and that, because there was probably 10, 12 of our jerseys up around the Shannon clubhouse, and there was that many of us involved with Munster at the time, and that transition. So the clubs have got battered over the years, and there is an expectation that people will still come through the clubs. There's probably an over-reliance, but the school system does naturally produce players coming through the system. But I do agree with Gordon Darcy, and if he's in his piece saying that, it's a continuous work in progress, and the clubs are continuously saying, well, the RFU don't care. I do think the RFU care, and I do think they rely on it, but I do think that the clubs need to come together themselves with good proposals, and sometimes they're met, particularly I know in Munster, about changing the structure of the league and having provincial leagues and things like that. So I don't have all the answers, and it's a debate and something you could talk about for a long time. But I do believe that making the club stronger again and finding ways of doing that, it's hard to do that. It's hard to get fans to go back and support the club game and get big crowds, but it's something that's very, very important, I think.
Yeah. All right. A couple of quick shouts before we leave you on the most memorable moment of the decade. Bit left field, says Jeff Tucker, but the rookie Gilroy's interview with Lance Armstrong, not necessarily the most memorable moment, but definitely in the top 16. He says a lot of support for your figure of eight, Quinny. Peter M saying that you were right, such a tough time, but everyone in Irish rugby left their colours at the door and rallied around. The O'Donovan brothers, anything they've done is pure class, as somebody else. And a shout there for Tyson Fury singing Aerosmith in the ring after beating Klitschko is another one that has so far gone unmentioned.
I thought it was you were just getting a rugby moment off me, because there's obviously there are
other areas
people,
to go.
Shane Lowry,
yeah,
that was a recent one. That was incredibly special as well. That
would probably be in the top 16. So yeah, that's pretty much that for the minute. We should say as well that the winner of our pair of tickets for the Heineken Roadshow in Galway next month, Darragh O'Toole on YouTube, who was the man with that shout out for Connacht in 2016. So fitting that you're getting those tickets, Darragh. Hopefully you can make it along in the night, and hopefully you enjoy it as well. Quinny, thanks a million for coming in.
Thank you.